There is a moment every goalkeeper knows. The ball leaves the striker's foot. It's moving fast, moving true. And in that fraction of a second, before it hits the net or hits your hands, you understand something primal. You are the last line. If this goes in, it goes in because of you. Not the defenders, not the midfielders, not the manager, you. For most of soccer's history, that weight was manageable. Brutal, yes. Lonely, yes. But manageable. There were certain eras, however, when being a goalkeeper wasn't just hard. It was genuinely, systematically, historically terrible. This is the story of those eras. And the men who survived them. Chapter 1. No rules, no protection, no mercy. Let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1863. The Football Association has just written the first official rules of the game in a London tavern. Soccer, for the first time, has structure. But here's what those early rules didn't have: any meaningful protection for the goalkeeper. In the earliest versions of the sport, the goalkeeper could be charged, physically shoulder-barged, at any time, whether he had the ball or not, whether he was moving or standing completely still. A striker could simply run directly into him. Legally. The logic was pure Victorian brutality. The goalkeeper was just another player on the field. Why should he be treated differently? The answer, of course, was obvious to anyone who'd ever played the position. Because he's standing in one place. Because he can't move laterally to avoid contact. Because running full speed into a stationary man isn't a football skill. It's just violence with a jersey on. Goalkeepers in this era didn't just need good hands. They needed good bones. Chapter 2. The entire field was their prison. Here's something that will feel completely alien to any modern soccer fan. For the first few decades of organized football, the goalkeeper was allowed to handle the ball anywhere on the pitch. That sounds like an advantage. It wasn't. Because it also meant the rules around when opponents could challenge him were almost non-existent across the entire field. Early football was chaos. Genuinely chaotic in a way that's hard to imagine today. 30 men and a ball, and very loose ideas about what was and wasn't allowed. The goalkeeper wasn't a specialized position in the modern sense. He was just the man at the back who caught things and tried not to get knocked into his own net. No gloves, no padding, no special jersey to distinguish him from outfield players, which meant even referees sometimes lost track of who was actually allowed to use their hands. A goalkeeper in 1880 was less a specialist and more a designated target. Chapter 3. The charge. The legal assault. By the late 1800s, the shoulder charge rule had been formalized, which sounds like progress. It was not entirely progress. The rule stated that a goalkeeper could be charged legally, even when not in possession of the ball, as long as he was within his goal area. Read that again. A player could run into the goalkeeper inside the goal area without touching the ball at all, and this was a legal play. The intention was tactical. If the goalkeeper was positioning himself to block a cross, an opposing forward could simply remove him. Physically, legally. This wasn't a flaw in the rules, this was the rules. Goalkeepers developed an entire secondary skill set that had nothing to do with shot stopping. It was closer to wrestling. Plant your feet. Brace your core. Expect contact on every single cross. The great goalkeepers of this era weren't just agile. They were immovable. Because they had to be. Chapter 4. The back pass. That wasn't a back pass yet. Now we move to a different kind of suffering. For most of soccer's history, from the 1860s all the way to 1992, a goalkeeper could pick up a deliberate back pass from a teammate with his hands. This sounds fine. And for a long time, it was fine. But by the 1980s, something had gone wrong. Teams discovered that the back pass rule, combined with conservative tactics, could effectively stop a game entirely. A team with a lead could simply pass the ball back to the goalkeeper. He'd pick it up, take his time, roll it out to a defender, who'd pass it back. Who'd pick it up again. The 1990 World Cup in Italy became the watershed moment. It was, by widespread agreement, one of the most boring World Cups ever played. Games were slow, defensive, suffocating. The average goals per game hit a record low. FIFA watched the tournament and made a decision. The back pass rule had to go. In 1992, they changed it. A goalkeeper could no longer handle a deliberate back pass played with the feet. And suddenly, everything changed. The goalkeeper had to actually play football, with his feet, under pressure, in his own box. For an entire generation of goalkeepers who had been selected entirely for their handling ability, this was a crisis. Imagine spending 15 years mastering a position, building your entire game around one fundamental skill set, and then being told the job description had fundamentally changed. Overnight. Chapter 5. The goalkeeper who could be attacked from behind. Here is a specific rule that sounds made up. It is not made up. In early football, there was significant debate about what constituted a fair charge on a goalkeeper. The shoulder-to-shoulder charge was legal. But what about from behind? In practice, for decades, the enforcement was inconsistent enough that goalkeepers were regularly subjected to contact that would today be considered assault on a football pitch. Referees had enormous discretion, and in an era when physicality was celebrated, many referees interpreted the rules generously toward attackers. The goalkeeper's job was to deal with it. Get up, roll your shoulder, get ready for the next one. Complaining was considered weakness. Asking for protection was considered weakness. The entire culture of the era was that a goalkeeper who couldn't take a hit wasn't a real goalkeeper. This attitude persisted, in softened form, well into the modern era. Even today, the instinct to dismiss goalkeeper complaints runs deep in football culture. But it started here. In decades where the physical intimidation of goalkeepers wasn't just tolerated, it was strategy. Chapter 6. The penalty kick arrives. And everything gets worse. The penalty kick was introduced in 1891. Before that, there was no penalty kick. A foul near goal resulted in a free kick, but opponents could line up a wall and the goalkeeper had help. The penalty kick changed the psychological contract of being a goalkeeper forever, because the penalty kick statistically favors the striker. Heavily. At the elite level, approximately 75 to 80% of penalties are scored. The goalkeeper is expected to fail, and when he fails, it is entirely visible, permanent, undeniable. But here's the specific historical horror. For decades, the rules around penalties were different in ways that made them even harder to save. Until 1997, goalkeepers were required to keep both feet on the goal line until the ball was struck. No movement, no anticipation. A goalkeeper who moved early could have the penalty retaken, even if he'd saved it. So the calculation was brutal. Stand still and guess. Commit to a dive and risk retaking if you guess right, but move a fraction too early. The striker had a run-up, a choice of placement, and the psychological advantage of expectation. The goalkeeper had a line he wasn't allowed to leave, and a 50-50 guess in front of 80,000 people. This was the rule for over a century. Chapter 7. The Era of the Elbow and the Boot. Let's talk about something specific. In the 1970s and 1980s, the physical game reached a particular peak of brutality that goalkeepers felt more than almost anyone. Defenders were allowed, in practice if not entirely in rule, to be ferociously physical with attackers. And attackers, in response, had learned to be ferociously physical back. The space in front of the goal was a war zone. Corners and crosses became exercises in controlled violence. Elbows were thrown, boots were swung at head height, and the goalkeeper, the man trying to come and claim the ball in the middle of all of this, had almost no protection. A goalkeeper who came for a cross was entering a space where the rules were, at best, loosely enforced. Get the ball or get hurt. Sometimes both. Several of the most respected goalkeepers of this era carry physical damage from their careers that never fully healed. Fingers broken and reset so many times they set at wrong angles. Shoulders that ache in cold weather. Knees that ended careers that should have lasted longer. This was simply the cost of the position. Chapter 8. The Rule. That finally changed everything. The World Cup in Italy, an average of 2.21 goals per game. FIFA's response was sweeping. The back pass rule in 1992, stricter enforcement of challenges on goalkeepers. And gradually, over the following decade, a cultural shift in how referees were instructed to protect the position. By the time the 1990s ended, the goalkeeper had become the most protected player on the pitch rather than the least protected. A challenge that was legal in 1975 would earn a red card by 2000. Contact that was expected in 1965 would be considered dangerous play by 1995. The position transformed. New rules opened space for a new kind of goalkeeper. One who could distribute, who could play with his feet, who could act as the first point of attack rather than the last point of defense. Goalkeepers like Peter Schmeichel, Oliver Kahn, Gianluigi Buffon. Men who combined traditional shot stopping with a commanding presence, vocal leadership, and genuine technical ability on the ball. The position had survived everything thrown at it, and it had evolved. Epilogue. The weight that never leaves. Here is what has never changed. Every goalkeeper in every era at every level of the game carries the same fundamental truth. When the ball goes in, everyone sees it. When the save is made, people move on. When the error costs the match, it lives forever. The laws have changed, the culture has shifted, the physical brutality has been regulated, but the psychological weight of the position, that singular, unreasonable, completely specific loneliness, has never been legislated away. There is still a man standing between those posts. Still the last line. Still carrying what no other player on the pitch carries. The worst time to have ever been a goalkeeper was any era before the protections we now take for granted. But ask any goalkeeper, past or present, whether they'd trade the position. They wouldn't. Not for anything. That's the strange thing about goalkeepers. The position has always been brutal, and they've always come back for more.